Joel Klatt releasing his post-spring top 25, and a lot of people will do this. There might be 30 of them. Joel Klatt with Fox Sports. This is his. We're going to digest this and kind of have a lot of discussion from both in the chat and, if you want, of course, with Craig and I and Craig and me and also Garrett Ross as well. So, there's a lot of top 25 polls. If you would have said, David, there are 12 post-spring top 25s, which schools will be at the top the most, if not all the time? And you would have thought Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, whoever, maybe one or two others. I did not think that it would be Penn State, but they've had a really good year in the portal. They're coming off a really, really good year, and the momentum is there. Can they match that? A lot of people were surprised. Penn State, Craig, at the top again in one of many polls, and this one being Joel Klatt.
Yeah, I guess it's about time to start kind of diving into these sorts of things, and I can't tell you honestly that I'm super well-versed on everybody in an all-around manner at this point. That's what a lot of the summer is going to be for, but I know there's a lot of excitement about Penn State because of their running backs, because of their quarterback who's already been mocked in a ton of mock drafts as a first-round talent, and having made an impressive showing and making and winning a playoff game last year. So, I think Ohio State has a lot of questions, although they're not too far there behind them. Michigan, a little bit further down, they've got questions as well. But, then there's Oregon. I got to remember they're in that league as well now. So, Illinois, you add them in, 5 of the top 12. It's pretty salty for the Big Ten on paper. And Penn State, I feel like it's about time for them to go and win the Big Ten, or it's about time for them to go and kind of lead the way. They always feel like they're in that top tier, but a step behind Michigan and Ohio State. And obviously they're a couple steps behind now because both those teams have won national titles in the last 2 years. So is it Penn State's turn? I don't know, but they are a very talented team, and they've got some mojo coming off of last year. So, okay.
Usually, if you look at who's at 1 in Penn State, and then, Craig, you mentioned that we don't really have enough information, and there's going to be more changes between now and the start of the football season, but at least it's something to chew on. But 2 of those 4 teams at 1 and 4 are teams that get a lot of pub, especially Oregon, have not been able to finish it off. Penn State has some national titles. It's been a long, long time, but those 2 teams from the Big Ten, and 3 of the top 4, as you mentioned, and 1 and 4 are teams that are salivating to maybe get to the top.
Yeah, I think we have enough information. I just haven't gone over all of it yet to know, like, Penn State versus, let's say, Florida or Illinois. I think that's, again, what a lot of the summertime is going to be, really breaking that down to the studs. But, on paper and what we do know, Penn State's a very solid team. So, they're refreshing, if anything. They're at number 1. It's not just Alabama as it was for 10 years in a row, or Ohio State or Michigan, or on occasion Georgia, and then maybe Clemson or somebody like that. It's been the same kind of handful of teams. So Penn State's new feeling there in that number 1 spot, which is, like I said, refreshing. So we'll see if they can't keep the Big Ten, I guess, supremacy of the last couple of years ongoing. If they could be a 3rd team to win a 3rd title in 3 years, that'd be very SEC-esque for sure.
South Carolina at 11. They're a team getting a lot of love with Sellers, the way they finished last year. There's the first Big 12 team, and then there are 4 consecutive Big 12 teams, 14, 15, 16, 17, with BYU, Arizona State, K-State, Iowa State. There's a team, Baylor, down at 24. I don't see Tech. I know that's going to drive Kim Coulter, but he likes that. He kind of likes that chip on his shoulder. But the Big 12, 14, 15, 16, 17. If I would have said, give me the top 4 teams, if there were 4 teams in the top 25, would those have been the 4 you thought you would see first?
Yeah, but I also feel like Joel, like everybody else, doesn't know how to separate the Big 12 schools. And I'm not saying that I can do that right now either. I just think that, again, it speaks to the league being pretty even across the board, and no real way to tangibly measure that somebody's superior to the others like he would have done if he was doing this poll a few years ago. Texas would be where they are, and the rest of the Big 12 schools would be kind of there. And maybe some years Baylor or TCU and obviously Oklahoma would be a little bit higher. But in the last couple of years since realignment, it's basically look at the top 10 and then go look in the middle, and there's like the run of 4 or 5 Big 12 schools in a row. And look what we got here. I mean, that's pretty much what it is in the preseason polls now. We don't know how to separate these teams, and we don't think they're better than like the top 5 of the other 2 conferences or a couple of maybe the ACC schools. So they're going to fall in line in the middle and all be jumbled together, and we'll see how they sort themselves out in the season. I feel like that's kind of where everybody is on the Big 12 at this point. So
yeah, you know what it reminds me of when they group those Big 12 teams together like that? It's almost like how you always have 1 or 2 teams. I don't see that right here in the group of 5 that's somewhere like 22 and 25 when you see a lot of the preseason polls come out. Like, oh, we'll put a couple of them in. Inside the 20 to 25 range. But
yeah, like the month before the season starts, he'll have, and I'm not knocking, I'm just saying like that's kind of how all these go now. But yeah, at some point, I don't know who the big G5 favorite is right now, but typically in the years past, like Tulane would be at 23 or, somebody along those lines. Boise State. Yeah, where's Boise State on here? They should be like 21 or something. And that would basically be your usual preseason poll. So I think there's, to have 5 teams is nice, though. If you're the Big 12, I think there's a lot of good representation. It's jarring. There's no non-power team in here that I see, like not a single one of them. Yeah,
well, no, that's what I was saying. Yeah, there's nobody.
But there's nobody at all. Like, yeah. I mean, period. So, yeah, they're not even there at the tail end like they typically would be when you kind of throw them that life preserver and say, here you go. But, yeah, I feel like, that the top is pretty strong. And there's not really a lot of arguing to say that K-State should be 6 or something like that. So it's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any prevailing thoughts unless you have questions you want to ask me to kind of break it down a little bit further. But
I don't see SMU in that top 25, which, of course, is a part of the ACC. And the way they ended last year, despite the loss, I thought maybe they'd sneak in somewhere in the top 25.
How many Big Ten and SEC? So there's Big Ten's got 3 of the top 4.
3.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm looking at Big
6.
Ten.
So there's 7 Big Ten schools.
7 Big Ten teams. Yep, Iowa being 23. Yep.
And then SEC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 17 of the 25 from the Big Ten and the SEC.
And then there's the 5 from the Big 12. That's 22. Then you have the ACC with Clemson. In there, along with
Miami.
Miami is at number 18. So there you have it.
I think Baylor could possibly be right there at the top of that Big 12 list, but so could Iowa State. I mean, again, that's the whole deal as we're talking about with those teams. They all just feel jumbled. So I guess he didn't just put Baylor and make it a whole straight line of just Big 12 schools, but you probably could have, and nobody really would have blinked too much on that. I think there's really no way to have a great feel on true separation there, unlike maybe a couple of the other leagues where you're like, Oregon's clearly a step above Illinois. Like Illinois has got a chance to do, but they're clearly not as good as Penn State or Ohio State. I don't think you can say, Baylor's clearly not as good as BYU. I think they very well might be, like or Arizona State and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's a very power heavy top 25, and I don't know if that's just necessarily how it's going to be moving forward, or we're starting to have slowly now entered the period where that's just the way it's going to be moving forward. And then maybe every once in a while you have a Boise at the end or a Tulane or someone along those lines, a service academy. But yeah, it's a very power heavy top 25 for sure. And for those who like to break that down even further, they don't want to consider the ACC or the Big 12. It's very power too heavy. I mean, start thinking about the NCAA tournament, all the talks about the seedings and how many could be grabbed by certain leagues, or even when you didn't have the automatic bye in the discussions for the college football playoff. Like, could you see a 14-team playoff with just 2 leagues? Well, yeah, they could probably come up with one, and this isn't far off from that. This isn't far off from that. If you
look in the top 14 teams, other than Clemson, Notre Dame is considered either the SEC, Big Ten, or whatever, being independent, but they're not.
They're ACC.
The ACC. Clemson 5 and 6, and then you have BYU right there at the end. So you have 3 of the 14 would be non-Big Ten or SEC schools that would make it.
Yeah, so I mean, that's
no group of 5 to be seen on this list.
It's just a preseason poll, so I mean, that is what it is, and it'll be different. I'm sure by August there will be somebody in there that's not in there right now, but I don't really have a big bone to pick with the rankings themselves at this point in May. But yeah, Penn State at the top is refreshing. Texas at 2. I mean, that means they're back in the playoff for a third year in a row, which I could definitely see in a 12-team playoff. But the best school in the SEC, like, man, Arch is just like they didn't even lose a quarterback, basically. They didn't lose anybody. They didn't lose.
People think they upgraded.
They didn't lose 14 guys to the NFL draft. That didn't even happen. They're just still there at 2. Now, I think that's a product of what they've done. I also think it's a product of everybody else. It does feel like they lost something substantial. And so maybe it's less about Texas than it is about the others. Just feel like they got dinged a little bit more. But
well, Alabama went through that stretch for a long time, but they kept proving it over and over again.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and Sark's got it going about as well as anybody right now. So I'm not saying they're not worthy of that. It's just it's interesting to see that you lose that many guys. But so did Ohio State, and they're right there. And all those teams around them lost plenty of guys.
Where would Tennessee be if Nico was still their quarterback? Would they be in that top 25?
Yeah, they'd definitely be in the top 25, I think. I don't know where, though. I don't know.
They'd probably put them above BYU just for
probably. Probably, yeah. I don't think they'd be like 20 to 25. I think they'd be back into the top 10, early part of the teens, probably.
Who are and Jeff Traylor joins us at 4. Give me the schools ranked there. This is more college football history or whatever, or trends. Who among the top 25? Because remember, there were times Texas would be at the end of the poll every year, no matter what they were going through for that decade when they were up and down and not very good and sometimes not even involved in the conversation. But they would put the logo in there because of, they're Texas. Who is now a part of this top 25 that's getting the benefit of the doubt in this poll that shouldn't be?
I guess you can make a case for Oklahoma.
Right there at the end.
I say that, but I know, like, I'm a fan of theirs, so it'll sound like but like with what they did this offseason, they damn sure better be a top 25 team. I mean, they went and got the best quarterback in the portal, arguably the best running back in the portal. They revamped their wide receiver room. Like, they did all these things, new OC, new GM. I mean, if they're not in the top 25, then I think that's problematic. But yeah, that could be just a bit of a placeholder. But I think it's, like, if they hadn't been that active, then I'd say that's totally a placeholder, and that's just giving them. But they've done enough, I think, to go, all right, they should be a top 25 team. And then if they're not, Brent Venables is being fired probably at the end of the year.
A&M, Auburn.
Yeah,
a couple of people have said them.
I think A&M is, potentially in that category. It does feel like they just automatically get a top 25 bid every year now. And I mean, Marcel Reed was a good quarterback, but I wasn't like blown away by him necessarily last year to the point of where I'm like, man, they're definitely a top 20 team. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know all of these teams the same way I'll know them come like July. So maybe that's justified.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't want to say that's stupid to have them there, and I might be wrong on that. So I'll be one of those media guys that actually pretends like I don't know everything.
Somebody asked about which of the group of 5, if you put 1 or 2 in there, you always can put Boise State in there. You could always look at the possibility of Memphis. You could always look at our guests coming up at UTSA as teams that might get discussion about being inside. Somebody mentioned Miami. I think Miami's kind of earned what they have. Now, they have to replace Cam Ward, and they think Carson Beck will help do that. Look at the bump at 13 with DJ Lagway and the reputation of how much he made a difference in a short amount of time for Billy Napier, who a lot of people thought might even be back this year as the head coach, the Gators in at a number 13.
Yeah, I think he's obviously a great quarterback. I mean, he's already being mocked in the NFL here in the next year or two. So, I mean, that's not really all that surprising to see them there because he's gotten a tremendous amount of.
I didn't say surprising. I know I'm not saying it's surprising, but how much of a jump that he has given that face of that program after where they were entering last year with the schedule they had, and they didn't know yet about Lagway or not seen him play at the college level. So that's
he's
pretty good.
Tremendous talent, and that's what a 5-star future NFL quarterback will do for a brand that's not really making a lot of noise. Is he'll turn it around. That's what great players do, and he's a great player. And so it's not just him solely on his shoulders, but he's the face of it, certainly. And, yeah, they rescued Napier from whatever buyout situation or lame duck type of season. I mean, they're clearly not in the clear just yet, but he's definitely given them a boost that they otherwise or that they were in desperate desperate need of.
All right. Somebody said, "Where's SMU?" I brought that up, Roger. They're not in there. Here's
Yeah, that's a little bit
for a
surprising.
question for you, Craig.
That's a little bit surprising to not see SMU there. And there was a couple of others you talked about that I didn't remember what you said.
No, I think we hit them all. I think Iowa's one that you could probably. They're going to be 8-4, right? They're going to be steady. They're going to be solid. And you put them in the top 25 because pretty much at the end of the year, and sometimes France and company are a little bit better than that.
I mean, it's the Miami thing. Yeah, if you wouldn't have replaced Cam, I mean, you're replacing Cam Ward, so that's a big deal. I think losing like even the Restrepo is a big deal for them. But I can see with what talent they still do have remaining, and going and getting Carson Beck, and you're assuming that he's going to be like really good Carson Beck. I can see where you can fit them in, but I can also definitely see an argument of where, it's okay. Miami's getting the benefit of the doubt. I could see that for whoever pointed that one out there.
All right, here's a question for you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Interesting that Texas Tech isn't on here.
No, okay, here we go. Kim, Kim's a huge Tech fan, a donor and all that, and a viewer of what we do. Is it fair to ask Craig, given his comments about what OU did in the portal, why wouldn't he take the same perspective towards Tech, who had the number one portal class? Is that unfair on my part or not?
No, I mean, I was already thinking it. So before you even saw that question, I was already thinking about Texas Tech as I bring them up there. So that's funny timing. No, I mean, I wonder the same why they're not on here. I think for Oklahoma, they get the SEC rub. I think they get the blue chip rub as well, or the blue blood rub, I should say.
Absolutely.
And so when it comes down to maybe, everything, all things being sort of equal, then that probably gives them the edge to be that 25th team rather than Texas Tech or somebody else that would be in that space. I definitely think that plays into some of these on occasion. So that's where I could see that being a deciding factor. But I would have Texas Tech in here. I don't know who I would replace them with, or who I would put them in place of. But yeah, I think that there's room for them in here somewhere.
All right, though. So there we go. Joel Klatt from Fox Sports and his post-spring top 25, and there'll be thousands of them.